Thailand, a Buddhist temple in Lopburi province has become a refuge for HIV/AIDS patients. This man's family refused to care for him when he contracted AIDS from drug use.
I am happy here, but when I was at home, they just pushed the rice plate to me. I could not eat what I wanted to eat.
The bodies of those who die are cremated according to Buddhist practice, but some families refuse to claim the ashes of their relatives, so they pile up here.
I understood that our people are afraid of infection, afraid of the patient.
Alongkorn Dikapanio is the abbot of this temple.
But our people have mercy. Our people like to give some money, some food, some clothes, some medicine. But nobody came to our temple because of they're afraid of infection.
Even after decades of education campaigns in Asia, many HIV patients are still shunned. Jimmy Low is a social worker at the Hong Kong AIDS Foundation.
They've always been labeling like they're homosexual or they're a sex worker or they're using drugs.
Dr. Prapan Panupak treated some of the first HIV cases in Thailand in the 1980s.
Disclosure of one's HIV status to the other people is somewhat a difficult problem for HIV-infected persons. Should he tell his wife? Should he tell his parents? Should he tell his child, for example?
Being HIV positive can jeopardize a person's job. Vincent learned he was HIV positive in South Korea in 2005.
At that time in Korea, you had to have an anonymous test if you were a foreigner living in Korea. At that time, if you were found out to be HIV positive, you would be deported.
Breakthroughs in HIV treatment allow patients to live longer with no apparent symptoms. But the lack of anti-discrimination laws can make life harder.
Some lawmakers, they still think that we have to force everyone for HIV testing. Anyone HIV positive should be avoided, should be banned from working, for example, working as a government lawyer, from being a monk, for example. This kind of lawmakers or even politicians, I think they need to be educated.
Thailand has contained its HIV epidemic and the government funds treatment.
Many people think that HIV is no longer a problem in Thailand. Since we have been placed so highly by international organizations that Thailand is so successful in curbing down the epidemic. So the interest, the policy commitment is much lower now.
Wavering political will prompted the United Nations AIDS Agency to press governments to address the problem of discrimination. Steve Krause of UNAIDS Asia Pacific says many nations have pledged to eliminate it, but have not put promises into action.
And so what we're encouraging all governments to do in this region, but throughout the entire world, is to review their laws and legislation and see does it match up with good public health, good public policy, cost effectiveness, and human rights approach.
Until discrimination ends, monks here can only hope for the day when these glass cabinets will finally be empty. Hedda Bayron for VOA News, Bangkok.